Action.
Action! I was asked to do a video about Sigmund Freud. So, 2 minutes of Freud. Here we go. In 1900, Freud publishes Interpretation of Dreams. What Freud contributes is a new school in the study of mind, psychology, psychiatry. The study of mind goes back to ancient civilizations, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. It's one of the 6 fundamental questions of philosophy. Maybe there are 7. What is truth? What is beauty? What is justice? What is mind? What is divinity? What is community? How do we know what we know? What is mind? Everyone's been asking this question since Plato and Aristotle. Along comes Freud in 1900, and he creates a school of psychoanalysis, which now is one of 3 dominant schools in the study of mind. School number 1 we could call psychoanalysis, which analyzes an individual, and if this individual has dysfunctionality or complexes, the questions that are asked relate to, we try to look at what happened in the past, childhood. And psychoanalysis thinks that the complexes have their origin in traumas that occurred much earlier in life. The next school is cognitive psychology, which simply studies a person who might be dysfunctional or is looking to optimize their life and asks, what are you thinking right now? Psychoanalysis looks to one's past. Cognitive psychology looks to the present. What are your thoughts? Change your thoughts, change your life. And humanistic psychology looks to one's future, which imagines or constructs a human as capable of many things, infinite things, full of possibility, full of invention, with a forward-looking gaze to the future. So back to psychoanalysis. What Freud does is, it's quite simple. Freud gives us a proposed architecture of mind. And what Freud does is he creates a line. And below this line is the mind, is what he calls the conscious, and then the subconscious underneath that. And above this line is the outside world, the external reality. So this line, Freud gives it a name. He calls it the ego. And ego in Greek means I. Now on the street, colloquially, we use the word ego in the sense of arrogance or pride or self-worth. That's not what Freud meant at all. Freud designates ego as an instrument which has a very specific utility. The ego's utility or purpose is to reconcile impulses beneath the surface against external carrots and sticks in our world. You're 2 years old, you want to pee wherever you want to pee, you want to urinate, you get punished, you get corrected. You have an internal impulse, and the external world corrects it. So there's 2 more pieces to Freud, and the person who asked me to create this video was asking about the angel and the devil that's sort of on each shoulder. Well, that's kind of in the ballpark. Freud has the ego, so imagine this line right here. And beneath the surface are 2 very powerful impulses, subconscious impulses. One is called the id, and the other one is called the superego. Let's do the id first. The id is one of 2 fundamental impulses beneath the surface, and the id is all about, not in a good or a bad way, there's no judgment to this. Nothing's good or bad, only thinking makes it so. It's Shakespeare. The id is about selfishness, about me, about bringing things to the self without any regard to others. The superego is a competing and diametrically opposite impulse, also beneath the surface, which is about compassion and community and the tribe. So these 2 impulses are beneath the surface, trying to get out into the external world and express themselves. And as you can tell, they kind of conflict. It's the ego's job to reconcile these 2 impulses under the surface, which are trying to get out there and influence our behaviors and determine behaviors that we'll do in the world. And of course, they're going to run into rewards and punishments in the external reality. A couple more things about Freud. Under the surface are a half a dozen or 2 dozen other impulses that are not as strong, but they're lurking, they're there. They're all subconscious. There's the thanatos, which is the death impulse. There's the fellowshipic principle, which is an impulse toward feeling good and being happy. There's the libido, which is the sexual impulse. impulse. There are many others. But the big idea is two strong ones, id and superego, regulated by the ego. Last thing about Freud, not much of this is entirely original. Good artists copy, great artists steal. All the way back to Plato, we have a very similar structure. We have an instrument that regulates passions underneath the surface that are trying to get out. So if you do Plato and you imagine the same construct, you have something called reason, which reconciles impulses under the surface against the external realities. The two big impulses designated by Plato are desire and the thymos. Desire is food, clothing, shelter, survival. And the thymos in ancient Greek means spiritedness or hardiness. It's a search for status, a search for recognition. All socially organized vertebrates have this: fish, birds, eagles, moose, elk, lions. They all face each other and they try to compete for status within the tribe. They're under the surface, regulated by something called reason, which is reconciling impulses of desire, survival, food, clothing, shelter, and thymotic impulses, the thymos, status and spiritedness and recognition, against the punishments and rewards that are out there in the real world. So you can see a very strong similarity between Plato and Freud. That's up for now. Send me questions. Gana gona.